Good day, students. I am Mary Grace Degamo, and today I will discuss to you my short analysis of the novel entitled On the Road by Kerouac. But before that, let's read first the content of the analysis in order for us to be guided. So these are the content of the analysis. First is the background of the work, author's background, character web, characterization, plot, styles of the author, theme, cultural implication, and the implication of the title. So let's proceed first to the background of the work. On the Road is a 1957 novel by American writer Kerouac, based on the travels of Kerouac and his friends across the United States. It is considered a defining work of the post-war beat and counterculture generations, with its protagonist living life against a backdrop of jazz, poetry, and drug use. After Kerouac dropped out in Columbia University, he served on several different sailing vessels before returning in New York. He met and mixed with Beat Generation figured Allen Ginsberg, William Burroughs, and Neal Cassady. In between 1947 and 1950, while he is writing on what would become on his first novel entitled The Town and the City in 1950, Kerouac engaged in the road adventures that would form to his novel On the Road. He started working on the first of several versions of the novel as early as 1948 based on his experiences during to his first long road trip in 1947. Next is the author's background. Jack Kerouac is an American writer known for his novel On the Road, which became an American classic, pioneering the Beat generation in the 1950s. His real name is Jean-Louis LeBride Kerouac, and he is born on March 12, 1922 in Lowell, Massachusetts. He died on October 12, 1969 from an abdominal hemorrhage at age of 47. Next is the character web. As what I have researched, there are 30 characters in the novel, but I only put those major characters in the novel entitled On the Road. So, as what you have seen in the representation, there are characters on it, namely Sal Paradise, Ed Dunkill, Dean Moriarty, Remy Boncour, Leanne, Mary Lou, Inez, and Camille. So, Sal Paradise is the protagonist in the novel. He has a friends, namely Ed Dunkill, Dean Moriarty, and Remy Boncour. Remy Boncour has a sulky girlfriend named Leanne, and Dean Moriarty, a womanizing young man from Colorado, has three wives. His first wife is Mary Lou. She is a pretty dumb blonde from Colorado, and his second wife is Camille. Camille lives in San Francisco together with Dean and their children. And Inez is the third wife of Dean Moriarty. First is Sal Paradise, the protagonist and the narrator of the novel. He is a young writer living with his aunt in New Jersey who gets swept up by the mad eccentricity and excitement of Dean. Next is Dean Moriarty, the hero, a reckless, energetic, womanizing young man from Colorado, having grown up with an alcoholic father and spent time growing in and out of jail. Next, Mary Lou, Dean's first wife, a pretty dumb blonde from Colorado. Camille, Dean's second wife, for whom he divorces Mary Lou. Next, Remy Boncour, an old friend of Sal's from prep school, a flamboyant Frenchman, is a petty thief and gambler. Leanne, Remy Boncour's sulky girlfriend. And the last, Ed Dunkill, a tall and a friend of Sal and Dean's. He is not too bright, but he'll do anything on what Dean says. Next is the plot. The two main characters of the book are the narrator, Sal Paradise, and his friend Dean Moriarty, who really much admired for having a carefree attitude. The novel contains of 5 parts, and 3 of them describing the road trips with Moriarty. The narrative takes place in the year of 1947 to 1950. Part 1. The first section describes Sal's first trip to San Francisco, disheartened after having a divorce, and his life changes when he met Jen Moriarty, who is tremendously excited with life and begins to long for the freedom of the road. After taking several buses and hitchhiking, he arrives in Denver, where he hooks up with Carlo Marx, Dean, and their friends. In this part, they are having a party in the ghost town of Central City. Eventually, Sal leaves by bus and he gets to San Francisco, where he met Remy Boncour and his girlfriend Leanne. Remy arranges for Sal to take a job as a night watchman at a boarding camp as a merchant sailor while waiting for their ship. But Sal didn't take this kind of job for so long. That's why he hits the road again. And he said, "Oh, where is the girl I love?" He wonders. And after that, he met Terry, the cutest little Mexican girl on the bus to Los Angeles. They stayed together, traveling back to Bakersfield, then to Sabinal, her hometown. Sal met Terry's brother Ricky, who teaches him the true meaning of mañana, or it is called tomorrow. While he is working in the cotton fields, Sal realizes that this kind of work is not for him. So he decided to leave Terry behind and he take bus again back to Times Square in New York City, and he arrived at his aunt's house in Patterson. Next, Part 2. In December 1948, Sal is celebrating a Christmas with his relatives in Testament, Virginia. Sal's Christmas plans are shattered, and he said, "Now the bug was on me again," and the bug's name was Dean Moriarty. First, they drive to New York, where they met Carlo. Next, Part 3. In the spring of 1949, Sal takes a bed from New York to Denver. He is depressed and lonesome, and none of his friends are around. After receiving some money, he leaves Denver to San Francisco to see Dean. Camille, Dean's second wife, is pregnant and unhappy, and Dean has injured his thumb trying to hit Mary Lou for sleeping with other men. Next, Part 4. In the spring of 1950, Sal gets the itch to travel again while Dean is working as a parking lot attendant in Manhattan, living with his girlfriend Inez. Sal takes to the road again, passing Washington, D.C., Ashland, Cincinnati, and St. Louis, and eventually reaching Denver. He met Stan Stifford. Then, they are planning to go to Mexico City. Part 5. Dean, having obtained divorce papers in Mexico, they had first returned to New York to marry Inez. After his recovery from dysentery in Mexico, Sal returns to New York. He finds a girl, Laura, and plans to move right her to San Francisco. Sal writes to Dean about his plan to move to San Francisco, and Dean writes back saying that he's willing to come and accompany Laura and Sal. Next is the styles of the author. First is the conflict. The main conflict splits into two parts, the straightforward and the metaphorical. When we talk about the straightforward conflict, it is the search for a place to settle down and establish a meaningful living. In the novel, Dean and Sal was continued to roam in the States, and it is constantly on the road in searching for something new, exciting, and satisfying that leads to the metaphorical conflict. When we talk about metaphorical conflict, it is the characters that do not just try to find a home, but also try to find themselves. Next is the foreshadowing. Kerouac used mobility to express the resistance in establishing the norms of the culture of United States during the 1950s. It is a key text in the counterculture in representing the contestation of a central theme in American culture. Flashback. This novel has a long flashback where the first narrator reports the events of his and his friends' memorable journey. Next is the theme, having a freedom to travel and wandering. This novel tells the story of a journey. Its title simply emphasizes the importance of traveling on the road from one place to another, whether they are driving, riding, and hitchhiking. Next, experiencing the privilege and prejudice of their self. The ideal world of Sal and his friends is having a freedom from their obligations, from the law and the police, and it is being tied to any one place or any other woman. But all of this has a flip side. Sal and Dean's freedom is often predicated on others' lack of freedom, and it is generally only attainable because of their privileged status as a white males in America. Next, friendship never dies. In this novel, Sal thinks that friendship is important because wherever he goes, he always thinks of having a friend whom he can call up to stay within and go out and drink with him. Next is the cultural implication. This novel, On the Road, is considered a defining work of the post-war beat and counterculture generations, with its protagonist living life against a backdrop of jazz, poetry, and drug use. This novel embodied the beat generation, which values the individual freedom and the self-enlightenment. And the last is the implication of the title. On the Road was a novel of Jack Kerouac in 1957. It is based on his travels together with his friends, and it was set in aftermath of the Second World War. Sal Paradise's account of his travels across in America has become an emblematic of the struggle to retain the freedom of the American dream in a more sober historical moment. So, to sum it up, the author tries to convey to the audience that everybody is naturally dishonest and morally deceitful. Morals are defined by one's religion and the laws of the country, or it is the combination of the two. So that's the end of my topic. So I hope that you understand my analysis of the novel entitled On the Road. So that's all. Thank you and God bless.